list of the teams and drivers that took part in the 1986 Formula One World Championship. I won't be going into detail about them. This is mainly about just writing them down with the odd comment. I do other series that look at the drivers and the teams separately in more detail. Okay, so let's go. Let's put at the top there, 1986. Okay, so we start with the reigning world champions. McLaren and their drivers. Reigning world champion Alain Prost. And Keke Rosberg, father of Nico Rosberg. Keke won the championship in 1982. Next, Tyrrell, the team that is now Mercedes. Tyrrell became BAR in 1999, and then Honda, and then Braun, and then Mercedes. The name that everybody knows, Martin Brundle. And two Fs. Philippe Streff. Okay, Williams. Williams would win the Constructors' Championship this year in 1986. But their two drivers, Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet, would just miss out, with Alain Prost taking the title again. Okay, next up. Brabham, a long since departed team, but a world championship winning team in their time. Brabham had Riccardo Patrese. He would race for a long time. Angelis. He would die, unfortunately, this year, 1986, in a testing session at, I think it was a testing session at Paul Ricard. Now, was that the same testing session where Frank Williams, the owner of Williams, had his big car accident whilst leaving the circuit? And that's why he's been in a wheelchair ever since. I think he passed it last year though, didn't he? Of course, Frank Williams. But anyway, yeah, Elio De Angelis was killed this year in 1986. Warwick was in the Brabham that year now. Maybe he took over from Angelis, I'm not sure on that. Lotus. And here we had, to make sure I spell these names correctly, Johnny Dumfries, and his slightly more famous teammate, Senna, who at this stage had won 2 races in his career in 1985. He would go on this year, 1986, to win a couple more races, and then a couple more in 1987 as well, before suddenly exploding with success in 1988. Okay, next up, Zach Speed. Not a particularly good team, it has to be said. And Zach Speed's drivers were Jonathan Palmer, father of Jolyon Palmer. Would score the odd points every now and again, but didn't have a glittering career in Formula One anyway. Right, let's get this correct. Hoob Rothengatter. I remember all of these drivers, of course, but I can't say that I'm definitely going to get the spelling correct. I am going from a list because I don't know all of these off the top of my head. Maybe half of them I would get from memory, but that's all. Next up is the Haas team. Now, that's got nothing to do with the current Haas team. This Haas team, which was is a bit confusing, but it was sort of I think it was officially called Lola because it was a Lola team that was sort of rebranded Haas. It's a bit complicated. I've been trying to understand it for 36 years. But anyway, that's named after that. This team was set up by Carl Haas from Newman Haas IndyCar fame, whereas the current Haas team was set up by Gene Haas, who has a NASCAR background. These drivers were the 1980 world champion Australian Alan Jones, who I think came out of retirement for this year, expecting better than what he got, basically. Nothing much happened, unfortunately, for him or for Haas that year. Okay, so the other drivers. Patrick Tambay, a French driver, one winner of I think 3 Grand Prix in his career. When I was a young teenager, he was in the Ferrari, and he was always up there at the top, never competing for the championship, but always competing for wins. And the other driver, Eddie Cheever, most well known for IndyCar. Has achieved quite a bit in IndyCar. Okay, so Cheever. Okay, next up we have Arrows, a team that was around for a very long time. Their drivers were Mark Schurer, Swiss driver. Never really took much notice of him, really. And Christian Danner. The main thing I remember about Christian Danner was that he came, I think it was 4th in the 1989 US Grand Prix. Where was that held? The 1989 US Grand Prix. Wasn't Phoenix, because Phoenix was before that. It must have been Detroit, maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he came 4th in that race. Eddie Cheever, I think, came 3rd. Yeah. Anyway, that was a different year, 1989. So Christian Turner. Oh, and of course this one. Spell his name correctly. Thierry Boutsen, the Belgian driver. One of these drivers that excelled in certain teams, and then in other teams, didn't, basically. He was extremely good when he was in the Benetton. Less so, I think, when he was in the Williams. Different cars suited different drivers, Winner of 3 Grand Prix, Thierry Boutsen. Next up, Benetton. Basically the original Red Bull. Just like Red Bull is a drinks company that has become synonymous with motorsport now through its sponsorship and ownership of all things fast and furious. Benetton did the same in Formula One when they were sponsoring Tolman, and then they bought the team. So, the clothes manufacturer suddenly becomes a motor racing team. Benetton, very successful as well, won championships with Michael Schumacher, of course, in 94 and 95. And then as Renault, they won again in 2005 and 2006 with Alonso. They are the current Alpine team, Benetton. And Benetton were Tolman before 1984 they were Tolman. They became Benetton in 1985. And their drivers were, of course, I don't know why I had to look actually, just to confirm, but Theo Fabi and Gerhard Berger. I have to look at the list I've got here actually, because there might have been a third driver that just sort of popped in and did one race for whatever reason. So I have to include that one. So Benetton, Theo Fabi, Gerhard Berger. I remember Theo Fabi got 2 pole positions that year. The Benetton was very fast, and of course Gerhard Berger would go on to win about 10 Grand Prix and would feature for about 5 or 6 years at the top of the field. I've just recorded a video on Gerhard Berger. Actually, it's probably already been released. It might have been released, it might not, depending on what order these videos go out. list the obvious ones, but of course there are always ones that just popped in and did one race. So we've got, how many teams have we got? I've still got 5 teams left. We've got, next up is Mansell, another one of the also ran teams. Pier Carlo Ghinzani, I remember him well. Pier Carlo Ghinzani only scored a few points in his career. Now their other driver was, well actually they've got 4 drivers here that raced for them. But it was Christian Danner again, even though he was in the Arrows there. He also seems to have done a little stint at Osella as well. Which they could do back then. And we've got Alan Berg, Canadian driver, didn't really do much, and Alex Caffey, whose best race was probably in the 1989 Hungarian Grand Prix, when he was in the top 5 or 6 train of cars for much of that race. That's probably his best race. Okay, so next we have the Minardi team. Also runs for many, many years at the back of the field. Became well loved, and that team was eventually bought by Red Bull, and they rebranded it Toro Rosso. Okay, so we have Andrea De Cesaris, the sort of driver who could be very quick on some days and terrible on other days. Never won a race. I can't remember if he picked up a podium, but I do remember him getting pole position at a race. I'm sort of thinking 1983 Long Beach. 1983 Long Beach. That's just from memory. Not from memory at the time. I was 12 years old. I haven't remembered it from the time, but just from, F1 information that I've picked up since, basically. I'm pretty sure it was 83 Long Beach. He was on pole in an Alfa Romeo. He certainly was not supposed to be on pole. Don't know what happened there. Anyway. Alessandro Nannini. One Grand Prix win, the Japanese Grand Prix of 1989, when Alan Prost took out Ayrton Senna. Nannini came through, overtook them. Senna rejoined the track, repassed Nannini. Senna therefore won on the track, but was later disqualified because he had had a push start to get back onto the track. So Nannini was given the win, even though he didn't cross the line first. Very good driver, especially just like Thierry Boutsen, especially when he was in a Benetton. He was fantastic in a Benetton. I've actually spelled his name wrong. I put 2 S's in there by mistake. I won't scrub it out because it looks messy, but I spelled that incorrectly. I think that's my first mistake. Then we have Ligier, a famous French team, Ligier, not around anymore. And they had René Arnoux, who again was very good in his Ferrari days and when he was at Renault as well. Probably even more so when he was at Renault. But he probably extended his career a little bit too long, and people remember him in his less than good days in sort of the late 80s, rather than when he was really good in the early 80s. Jacques Laffite. So 2 French drivers in the French team Ligier. Perfect. Just like Alpine next year. I mostly remember René Arnoux when he was teamed up with Patrick Tambay in the Ferrari. But in 83, that was. But he was also very good in earlier than that, 82. He was in a Renault. He was Alan Prost's teammate in 82, I believe. He was, yeah, in the Renault. Jacques Laffite. Jacques Laffite that had the big accident at the 1986 British Grand Prix this year, which ended his career on 176 race starts, which was joint best of all time with Graham Hill. So he didn't manage to pass him, unfortunately, because his career ended in that accident. So, one big team that we haven't mentioned yet, of course, but we've still got another driver to go, and that is it's 2 L's, isn't it, I think? Philippe Alliot. So actually, 3 French drivers in the Ligier that year. That can't be an accident, although back then, in the 80s, there were lots of French drivers, probably more than any other nation. So next up we have, of course, Ferrari, with their drivers of Michele Alboreto and Stefan Johansson. I think it's 1T, isn't it? I should remember. Two S's, I believe. Yeah. Michele Alboreto and Stefan Johansson. Michele Alboreto had been runner-up the previous year in 1985 to Alan Prost, and had looked earlier in the season like he was going to win the championship, but the second half of the season totally belonged to Alan Prost. Stefan Johansson, Swedish, wasn't he? Swedish. Good driver. Never won a Grand Prix. Probably one of the best to have never won a Grand Prix. Lots of seconds and thirds and fourths. Raced for Ferrari and McLaren most of the time. So the last one is AGS. They just had one entrant. Ivan Capelli. He was another one of these drivers that excels in one team and in not so much in another one. When he raced for March, or was it Leighton House by then? Anyway, in 1988 and 89, he was fantastic, which is why he went up to Ferrari. I think 88, 89 and 1990, he nearly won the French Grand Prix in a March, or a Leighton House. In basically, the March became known as Leighton House, but I can't remember exactly what year that was. Anyway, we'll call it March. Ivan Capelli nearly won the French Grand Prix, but was overtaken by Prost in his Ferrari with about 2 laps to go. But then he went to Ferrari in 1991. Was it 1991 or 1992, maybe? And just didn't seem to slot in there at all. Just fell not click at all in that car. Anyway, so I don't think I've missed anything out. I'm going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. How many have I got here? 1. Let's put that on focus, make sure it's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 33. 33. I don't think I missed anyone out though. I'm pretty sure I didn't miss anyone out. Oh, now I know why, because team has... That's right, Alan Jones. Yeah, I know why that is. It's because a couple of the drivers were listed twice for the same team, like Alan Jones, but yeah, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so there you have it, the list of the teams and drivers from the 1986 Formula One World Championship. As I say, one of them is mentioned twice, Christian Danner, because he raced in 2 separate teams. But I think that's 32 drivers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32 drivers. There were 26 places on the grid for each race, but I don't think we had pre-qualifying back in 1986. That happened a few years later. But not all of these drivers, some of these drivers took over from other drivers and or maybe covered when a driver was ill or something, so they weren't all competing for those 26 spaces at each Grand Prix. They are. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to subscribe, please do so, or leave a comment, or like the video. And I will join you on the next video.